My name's Chris.
And I'm Kristie.
And I'm Rosemary.
It's Washing Up Podcast. It's Rosemary. How are we?
Oh, we are fine. How are we?
We are brilliant. Summer keeps pretending to be here, but we've got sunshine now, so that's a bonus. Only half the state's in floods, and not our half, so it's bright and
that's great, Kristie. It was -8 here last night.
I'm aware, and just as we saw on the socials, just chilling with some awesome people.
Oh my gosh, yes, but I was shivering the whole time. It was so cold. No, the boys, my Baker boys, they're so.
Didn't Jay's warm embrace keep you warm?
No, they were a little standoffish. They wouldn't let me get inside their coats and stuff.
Oh, that's disappointing. And hello to everybody, by the way, involved in that photo who was wonderful, including, again, the wonderful Jay, friend of the show.
Mm-hmm.
So speaking of friends of the show, it is fantastic to finally have you on.
Finally, I made it.
You made it.
We know that your whole, auditioning for
The whole
Great
thing
Canadian Baking Show was just to come on our podcast. So, thank you for those efforts, and here's your reward.
I'm just a media hoe.
Aren't we all? So, it's as one of Australia's richest businessmen once said when he was trying to buy one of the largest sports in Australia, we are all whores, gentlemen. What is your price? For us, it's podcasting. So it's fantastic to have you on. Obviously, we've interacted on social media for a very long time now.
Mm-hmm.
And it's always lovely when we get to see somebody we've interacted and got to watch on socials and see their baking go into the pavilion. It's absolutely fantastic. And I think when you went in, I think I messaged you and I was probably more excited than you were.
Well, probably not, but I mean, sort of close.
It was close.
Because it was lovely to get a message from you though, because it's sort of like, it's such a special thing to get to bake in the tent that, you kind of want everybody to celebrate with you.
So easy to do. So tell us about your journey to the tent. What brought you to baking and what brought you into the pavilion? Oh, I keep saying pavilion. Oh.
And we know they kept on editing you, by the way, to make you say tent. It's fine.
It's fine. We get it.
We're just forced. We're forced to say tent.
The schlag makes you.
We don't sit on that beautiful balcony very often. So for us, it's still the tent.
It's a tent. Yeah.
Kristie, I think everybody who follows the show now and all of that probably knows that I started baking after my daughter passed. Mm-hmm. And she's just a lovely young woman. And I just wanted to make sure that her legacy was honored with my grandson, her nephew. And I think I managed to do it. I think the loveliest thing when I left the tent, when I finished baking in the tent, when I was over baking in the tent, I got so many private messages from people saying, I'm sure your daughter is very proud of you. You've done your daughter proud. What a great legacy you've passed on to your grandson. So that's lovely. And that's how I started baking, because before that, it was like, I was never that child with the easy bake oven. Like it was just like, if I could, the only great experience with baking I had with as a kid was my mom had this big cast iron skillet, because we're a big Irish Catholic family, big cast iron skillet, and she would make like an almond flavored birthday cake, or if she was feeling very extravagant, and we ate it like
out of the skillet,
out of the pan, or she'd make a mocha cake. And the other experience was we had a restaurant on the corner of our street, and it made these sticky buns, like Chelsea buns.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my God. I spent most of my allowance on those. They were just the best. Like even now I can still taste it, like, 55 years later, whatever.
There's something in particular.
The neural pathway is strong.
There's something in particular about, and I think it's partly the way they're, apart from the flavor and the smell, I think partly the way they bake the Chelsea bun or the cinnamon roll, which are all very similar in the way you make them. And there's just something about that always appeals.
Because they're a gregarious bake. They like to stick together. You've got to kind of like pull them apart. You know, you've got the umbilical cord kind of section from where they've been about it.
You did. Oh, you took it down there, Kristie, with the umbilical cord. No, back it up.
Okay. They're a gregarious fake. There we go.
It's also, I mean, it's also the way they would describe it now as a family style type bake, where you put them all and then everyone sort of pulls them apart and gets to
the pull aparts and stuff. Yeah. As a young woman, actually, when I was first married, there was a bakery near where we lived, and they would make, I mean, now I realize it's a babka. I didn't realize that back then, but they would make like a big, to me, it was a giant cinnamon roll. My mother-in-law called it coffee cake, which also it wasn't that either. And it wasn't a giant cinnamon roll. If we had known the word that it was babka, we would have said that, but it was like this giant thing.
They had to make it palatable for white people. That's what we get in Australia a lot.
But it was a Jewish style bakery. So it surprised me that they did say that. I mean, my ex's family is Jewish. So like, and they
with the knish. Yeah.
Oh, the knish, yes.
What a legacy to bring with you.
So what did you get? What did you get from your first marriage? Knish.
Well, I got my 2 baboos and all of that. Yeah. And the pain and sorrow of a divorce.
But again, knish. So
as my friend told me when I was going through divorce with my first husband, shit climb, great view. That's like the mantra. Shit climb, great view.
And like, to be perfectly serious about Rosemary's TED Talk on divorce.
There you go.
When I was separating from my ex-husband, I was like literally one day in the fetal position on the floor of my kitchen, just completely wretched. And a friend of mine came in and did the there thing. And I said, oh my God, because I come from such a Catholic background that divorce is just almost non-existent in our family, except for me. I'm such a trailblazer.
You are the trailblazer.
Yeah, go for it. But so there I am. I'm in the fetal position. I'm going, oh my God, my children are going to come from a broken home. And she very, very intelligently and sympathetically, in the kindest way, she said, no, maybe it's fixed now.
That's
exactly
beautiful. Yeah,
I know. Yeah,
that's that deep, especially when you're in that emotional state. That's that deep wisdom that you need to think about it and go, well, hang on, why? Okay, no. That's exactly right.
Human relationships don't have to fit in a mold to be productive and to be positive for it. I saw my ex-husband a couple of weeks ago. It's good. I was looking fucking hot.
Yep.
I was not expecting him. He walked in and I had this moment of panic, like, oh no, like, and then there was nothing. And I'm like, I'm completely and utterly neutral. And I looked at him and I'm like, smiled and said, hello. And he just came at me with the same kind of like snarly bullshit. I'm like, dude, like, I know you're happy. You've got kids now. You've got a new partner and stuff. Just fucking, we weren't good with each other, but we're good with other people. Like, it just, relationships don't have to be everything. Yeah.
I do think it's sad sometimes when I mean, people split up and break up and separate and divorce for reasons, and most of them are usually good reasons. But I do think it's sad when people hang on to it for the longest time. My ex and I, we were friendly. We were, we were okay. But after our daughter passed, that's a very sort of special. It's an unfortunate bond, but it's a very special bond because who else in the world knows how much you're missing that child except for the other parent of that child. So, that's a big bond, but he is pretty annoying.
But at least you can reminisce about your wonderful daughter with him and share that grief journey. And sorry, I sound it, I work in palliative care. So I'm kind of like that whole beauty and sadness, and like, it's friggin' tragedy. If you could choose, you'd have them back. It's not like you're going.
Exactly.
But it's also important, like, let's talk about baking, or we'll talk about grief and death and dying.
You've listened to this, where we're going. We go everywhere.
She's like,
I think it's important. I think it's important too, Kristie. I mean, you talk about your experiences, And I will talk to anybody about my daughter and my experience with losing my daughter. And plus my daughter, when she was young, was quite ill. She had T-cell ALL, and she had a bone marrow transplant. And, you know, it was a period of time where she was extremely ill, and we could have lost her then, but we had her for another 20 years because of a wonderful man who donated his marrow. But, you know, I think it's important that people realize that people do lose children, adult children, baby children, miscarriages, stillbirths. I mean, people lose children, and it's a very special type of grief, and you don't have to be afraid to approach us. You can, you know, just let us talk. We're cool with that. I'm at a point now in my journey where Sarah is dead. It's 8 years now, coming Christmas. She died at Christmas. So, you know, I'm pretty okay with it. If you saw me at the cemetery, you wouldn't think that. But like I'm pretty okay with it. I'm balanced. I'm okay. I'm doing well. I mean, it's terrible to lose anyone you love, but a child, it stays with you every single day of your life. You know, you don't, there's no getting over losing someone. You know, there's just how you deal with it in your day-to-day life. And then there's banana bread, just to change the subject.
Yeah, of course.
But one of the things that said we love when we talk about things like Bake Off and things like that is that it's a show where it does in many ways actually address bigger things through baking. And it addresses things like stronger community. All of those things come through. And
it's easier for people to talk about baking from the celebratory or the kind of like the homey sense. But, you know, baking is so many things to different people. I've heard people hate baking.
Yeah, well, there's lots of hate bakes.
Hate bakes.
You know,
anger baking.
It's called, Kristie, I believe it's called technical. Hate baking is referred to as a technical. But it's I
like the technicals, Chris. So
I know we're going to talk about your penchant,
but I really like technicals.
We're going to talk about your penchant for technicals, but that is going to come up. But,
because emotions aren't good or bad. Some are comfortable and some are uncomfortable, and I think it's great that, you know, we're in a space now, and we couldn't have talked about this, I think, when Bake Off was first in its infancy. You know, like we've all kind of grown as people, and you've seen Bake Off's developed, and the
community,
Canada's refined it,
but the community is also something which is, again, embraces people more than rejects people, which is something we've talked about a lot with a range of food shows and a range of versions. We've talked a lot about British and how it doesn't necessarily carry that as much as it has in previous years. And I think Canadians, like again, like this week, there were a ton of articles this week about Alan talking about alopecia, and that he's talked all about that this week. And, you know, she and a lot of the bakers have talked a lot about mental health and a lot of those sort of conversations. And it's, rather than sort of being a very dismissive, angry community, by and large, there are always going to be your exceptions. Usually it's people on Facebook, but with some exceptions, most people, when it comes to Bake Off, don't cheer against people. They cheer with people.
Yeah.
And it's compared to other food shows where people pick sides, and it's this one versus this one, and it's this one versus this one. And, you know,
But if you would say, who's your main competitor in the pavilion? Who really brought it, you know? Sorry, I should have said that again.
People who can't see this, Rosie just did a spin take.
That was bad timing, Kristie. That was a big
Rosie just managed a spit take because Kristie managed to crack her up at the wrong moment. But it was something I was talking to on Twitter. I was talking to the Practical Escapist on Twitter, who's a food blogger and stuff like that, just did their last Twitch stream for a while. And one of the things we were both saying was the same thing, which was there's no wrong answer in this whole series in terms of who would make the grand final and who might win and where things might go. And every week there's no wrong answer, but because everyone's
who is the challenger, like not the winner, but who was like the most competitive. I'm kidding.
She's kidding. She being silly.
Well, it was
exactly. Oh, she's broken up. Oh no.
God.
Oh, I don't know if we got that, but wow. That's a revelation right there. Oh
That's
my
gonna
scandal.
rock,
Scandal.
rock the
Scandal.
pavilion.
Did you hear that, bakers? You heard that all.
Above the fold.
Oh my God.
And everyone knew it.
You wouldn't have seen that coming. You wouldn't have suspected at all.
But in terms of
God.
like, to then get to the baking, because we can get to the baking.
We always do eventually.
I know we do. And
I love to bake.
that is Rosemary.
Let's
That is
talk about baking.
So I'm going to start with what is my favorite one of your bakes, actually. I'm going to start with your fairy tale showstopper.
Did you see the shoes?
Yes. So
Okay.
I've been rewatching parts of this because my mother's been a little bit behind. So I was over yesterday, and it's her birthday today. So happy birthday, Mum.
Yes.
But I went over yesterday and I sat down with her and we rewatched Biscuits and Bars Week. And as you started to do that marbled floor, Mum was just like, oh, that's impressive. And like, again, that bake is so just beautiful. And again, your use of the story behind it and the little detail, and again, it's those little details.
So what was your thought process? Like, how do you come to a bake like that? And
well, I should have had the book down here. So that, you know, when they told us fairy tale or once upon a time fairy tale, I think was the brief, because it's like so long ago and I'm so old, I don't remember anything.
I feel you.
But it was, you know, a fairy tale. And my sister and I, we had our mom's Grimm's fairy tale book when we were young. And it's like absolutely ghastly because it's not.
No, it's not the cleaned up ones.
And my mom, like you have to, okay, so to set the mood, my mom was born in 1918. So she had it when she was like, I think like 14, 15, this book. The illustrations are like separate plates in the book because, you know, they couldn't be combined. It was different types of paper and beautiful Art Deco illustrations, like absolutely breathtaking. They're just lovely. Like when we were kids, it was always like, we just wish there were more illustrations because they were so pretty. And the one that my sister and I liked the best was the Princesses and the Dancing Slippers, like the one that I did. So when they said fairy tale, that was immediately what I thought of. And I thought, well, what am I going to do? I'm going to show like a bunch of bloody feet. Like show like, you know, the human trafficking with these guys taking these girls up in these swan boats, you know, or like, you know, like parental abuse, like because the dad's trying to lock them in their rooms.
What have you done? I've done a diorama on trauma.
That's it. Like what kind of happy moment am I going to show in there? And I thought, you know what I'll do? I'll Disneyfy it.
Yes.
And we couldn't say that on the show because, you know, we can't say
can't use the D word. No.
Brand names and trademarks and stuff for obvious reasons. But like, I just thought, oh, I'm just going to go full out. So like their beds, which in our version, and my sister and I, our version of it, are sort of these very Gothic looking beds. So I made them like those little cute kind of 4 posters. My dog. And then the floor to me was getting a little spooky looking. And then the tree in the background, a little spooky, and then the cute little swans. But it was the shoes. My friend Jennifer, I was like struggling with the shoes. I'm trying to do it this way. I'm trying to do it that way. I'm trying to do this. And my friend Jennifer came over and she went, oh, you know what? I saw some really cool candy shoes on like she can barely Google things. Anyways, on some kind of social media platform. And it took her like an hour to get back to it.
Good on her.
She's 10 years younger than I am. And really she struggles. 14 years younger. Anyways, but so she finally finds the picture and I look at it and I went, it's kind of cute. But then I thought, oh, maybe I'll do this. And then I had to take a piping tip and destroy the piping tip and everything. Yeah. And the shoes were just like literally my favorite thing about that bake. Like they were just like, because they weren't even an inch big. They were so teeny tiny.
That's the thing, it's that level of, and like everyone in that challenge, it was that level of like really precise detail. Like that that challenge is, not to spoil it too much because the committee hasn't met yet, but the Virgies committee, I think, is probably going to look quite favorably on the fairy tale scene bake for
I
the
have no
awards.
idea. I'm not on the committee.
No.
It's all
I'm
new
so
to
sorry.
me.
Someday you'll make it.
Yeah.
Look, who knows? And someday you might get a Virgie that you can actually fucking hold on to.
Well, look, I mean, we've got 2 sets of Virgies coming up in the next couple of weeks. So there's 2 sets of Virgies happening, one Canadian, one Australian. So
2 chances to not get one.
exactly,
Or
2
drop it at the
chances to
bottom of a
miss.
harbor.
Don't remind me. Anyway,
Sure, I was eating by a
And
bull.
I did want to make the bake. There's no icing on that whatsoever. There's no coloring. It's only the coloring that were the cookies that were colored.
the floor was
Yeah.
the thing that just sold it. It was just the marbling in that pattern and just the way that looked was divine. It was absolutely spectacular, and it was a good way. I've given you the nice one to talk about because it was a good way to get over the technical in that week.
Let me just say, wasn't it
stop
kind of
you.
fun
Let's give
when
him a
Bruno
little
kind of coughed a little? Spicy.
I thought that was. I look. I'm not going to accuse Bruno of being a drama queen. I would never do that. But I mean, the flair for the dramatic and Mr. Phil Dyson are not very separate at the moment. He's very much developed. I'm taking credit from that Virgie performance, but his sudden and I'm like, that feels very Bruno. Come on.
I think they track Bruno's development by his pocket squares.
Yes.
He started out with just very sedate,
straight down the line into the last episode, rainbows.
I do have to say the costuming, the ensembles that Bruno, Kyla, and Anne and Alan are wearing this year. I mean, it's like every day we come into the tent, we go, oh, so beautiful.
It's been,
and you can see the bakers going, holy shit, we have to up our game. Like Lauren's there.
Lauren's like, more dinosaurs, more earrings. Like it's been like fashion wise, like forget even the baking, fashion wise. It has been just next, and every time they come in, it's something even. One of my favorite moments, fashion-wise, was it's a simple one, but it was Andre and Alan standing next to each other in week 2, both with matching hats. And it was just so cool because you could almost see Alan looking at Andre like, "I've got a friend. I've got a friend."
You got a friend.
And start doing a slow shoe shuffle just down the.
And I like the way we've managed to use this to get away from the alpha horrors.
She's learned our distraction. Take them on a tangent. We don't have to talk about.
She knows this.
Listen. Let's have a frank discussion. Okay. So, first of all, the cookies were fine.
Yeah.
There might have been some issues with the dulce de leche, yes. And the reason why my alfajores looked different from everybody else's is when you have literally less than 2 minutes to finish off your cookies, you go, okay, how am I going to make this happen? And I knew I had to I should have probably just not bothered putting the coconut on, but I knew I had to get coconut on them. I know very well. Thank you very much, Baking World, because I've been called on it. I know what they were supposed to look like. I didn't have time. No. So I just thought, you know what? Let's just slop that stuff on there. And
you just pretended that coconut was bacon and you just threw
bacon at it. Yeah.
Threw bacon at it.
But it was an executive decision. It was my executive decision, and I still stand by it.
But it's that thing we've talked about a lot. And every time we talk to bakers from any series, it's that conversation of you go, yep, it's 100%. I know what it is, and I know how to do this, and I know what to do that. But there's somebody with a giant clock standing there going, you've got this long, you've got this long, you've got this long, you've got this long. And suddenly there's a moment of, oh, crap, I've got to get this. And I mean, look, the challenging part about that one for you, and we've mentioned it at the time, was in the Australian series, they did alfajores for Biscuit Week, but they only had to make 8 because they were making the stovetop dulce de leche, whereas you had to work out pressure cooker times. And I think you started with 10 minutes or 20 minutes, I think it was, and went in 20-minute increments.
And keep in mind that I'm terrified of pressure
Yeah,
cookers.
because that's what you said. I haven't
I
used
got
one in
one as a wedding present 40 years ago, used it once, just scared the bejesus out of myself. And I went, no, I'm never touching this again. I gave it away to somebody. And then I walk into the technical and my worst culinary nightmare is sitting there. Like,
because that's
I'm
what
going,
you said.
oh my
You're
God.
like, you're like,
went
it's
for a-
been 30 years since I've had I actually used one of these. And again, cooking times, because especially with a pressure cooker, once you get it up to the pressure and you get the temperature, once you have to release that pressure to get it all out, if it's not ready, the whole process of starting the whole thing up again, getting the pressure back up to pressure, it's a tricky component when you don't have bake time and you don't know how long it's going to be in there for. So with Australian, they only had to do 8, but that was because it was stovetop and it was all about making the dulce de leche on stovetop.
And that would have been fine. But you know, the interesting thing about the technicals, well, there's so many interesting things, but the interesting thing about the technicals is a lot of stuff like I'm not gonna put on a pressure cooker and make dulce de leche. Either I buy it in a tin because you know they make it.
They really do. It's quite good.
On shelf. Or I put it in the oven and I make it in the oven. Like if I need a large quantity, I make it in the oven, and literally I will have the oven going and then turn it off and go to bed. And when I wake up the next morning, there's dulce de leche in the oven, because so stuff like that. So to make it like in a pressure cooker, it would never have occurred to me, and actually even to use a pressure cooker. So the whole thing was just like, oh, this is going to go so badly. Like I just,
and I mean, especially relating to your technicals, and you had a pretty good record, including, let's address it, you won the technical of all technicals. We are, of course, referring to Shibakia. And so, obviously...
Yes, I have a Shibakia myself.
Exactly. Well, there we go. So obviously...
So it's interesting that I couldn't get it to look right, but I had no idea what they were supposed to look like.
I mean, John did. But what I found really interesting... What I found really interesting about that was, of course, you don't get to see that bake that they go out and go, so Bruno and Kyle are sitting there and go, so this is what they look like. So nobody in there got to see them, which is why I think everyone at home was dying. And everyone in there was just like, don't know what these are supposed to look like. Ah, well, that looks okay. Because you don't get to see that product.
Or what they meant by a rose.
And of course you guys know, I mean, I don't think the fans of the show or the listeners know particularly that each week, you know, there's less and less instructions in those technicals. So the Shibakia was like, it was really cool. Like, okay, so I'm glad that they didn't have a deep fryer, because I've actually never used one, because I fry in an open pot on the stove. Not very often, because we know that deep frying is not healthy for us. But, you know, but I did make fritters yesterday. So, but like, so I'm going, well, it's okay. Like there's oil, it's going to be deep fried. It's pastry. I mean, how difficult could this be? So like, you know, you can't taste raw flour with spices in it, but you can smell it. So I was smelling it. And I knew that, when something is like that and it's a short rise, like you have to be very careful not to over knead it. So that's cool. So I know that, you know, like, because I and all of the other bakers technically were very, very good bakers. I mean, I'm not blowing my own horn, but we're all very good bakers. Otherwise, you're not on that show if you can't make cookies, you know.
And not this series, and we'll talk about that in a minute.
So like when I was doing it and everything, but then I had the instructions for the fold of the pastry were so like, I don't know. It was
like IKEA.
It was IKEA. I couldn't read the English language anymore, it seemed like, you know. And I'm like, and I took a piece of paper and I cut it, and then I'm winding my fingers in it. And like, I spent like 10 minutes on that, and I went, okay, screw this. Like, and I just went, they want flowers? Let's make some flowers.
Well,
so I literally just like squished them into what I thought flowers would look like, because that's what we had understood, was that they were supposed to look like flowers.
Well, that was what
So-
Lauren did, where because Lauren's failing with hers because it didn't cook all the way through. But if you look what Lauren did, she made actual like roses.
Rosebud,
Like it's
yeah.
got to be flowers. Okay, I'll make a
Yeah.
flower. But then they went, it's a bit dense. Well, I made a flower. You didn't specify that.
I have made them since, because I really did like the taste of it, because I had one strip left over, so I tossed it in the oil.
Yeah.
And I got to taste it, and they really do taste like really lovely. So I've made them since, and I understand, because if you do it the correct way, there's sort of little spaces in between the portions of vagina.
Yeah.
The labia and the labia minora.
Minora, and yeah.
Yeah, so there's kind of spaces, so they do deep fry very nicely. But I do have to say, that was like such a lovely compliment that Bruno paid me when he said that, you know, like it brought back memories of his childhood.
And that's
You
what I
know.
want.
Do you think if the instructions actually said a vulva shape, it would have made it easier to do the folding? Because you...
Yes, of course. Maybe not for one or two people, I don't know, but
But even then, I think most people would have gone, find that out. But in terms of
vague
this,
idea of what that looks like.
in terms of this series, though, and that sort of brings us on to the point you're raising before about everyone in there is technically sound. We've said it a few times. Yesterday when people were putting their hot takes onto Twitter before, you know, the whole platform collapses. And my hot take was that British Bake Off is at best the third best version currently running, and that Canadian and Australian, but Canadian in particular, has seriously surpassed it a while ago. And this series of Canadian and your series of Canadian has probably put together the most talented, consistently across the board group of bakers we've ever seen. And that's not saying anything about previous series. And that's not saying anything about previous series. I've had people from previous series messaging me going, I can't believe the level of what we're seeing in there. It's been such a high quality, just forget even technical, group of people. Just as people, it's such a high quality group of people. And that's come across, I think, to the audience at home, the entire series. How's it sort of been watching it back, but first of all, being as part of it and then watching it all back as well?
Well, being part of it is completely wild, because, you know, we were actually discussing this last night, because it's pretty cool to get four bakers together. You know, any four bakers will do, but four bakers who've been on the show, because we all get the experience. And it's sort of like, you know, okay, so you have 2 hours to do something. So for an hour and 40 minutes or an hour and 45, you're hunkered down, you're doing, you're going, you're doing, you're going, you're doing, you're going. And then, like, you know, somebody will say, you know, you have 15 minutes left. And then, of course, like the space-time continuum is just like what? And then, you know, they say, okay, you know, it's over. And then you look up and you go, what magic happened? Look at these things around you. It's like so astonishing, because you're just like, you're so in your own space and in your own head and in your own bake. And you don't really 100%, unless there's a break in the action sort of thing where, like, you know, you can take a moment to breathe. But other than that, you look around at the end of the bake and you go, oh my God, look at, like, it's just magic.
My favorite one of those was in the fairy tale one, at the end of the fairy tale one, where they just cut to Zoya, who looks at Nigel's dragon and goes, it's breathing fire. And that sort of, for me, sums up the way everyone is at the end of a challenge, because you look around and say, oh my God.
Yeah, no, it's just awesome. And then watching it back, well, I think that experience is probably universal, like, because we know that they're not going to edit the show to make us look like horrible human beings. First of all, because
you can't.
We're not. We're like, I was very pleased. I had phoned my son and I said, oh my God, they're all such nice people. I can't believe I'm here with such nice people. And he said, well, you're a nice person too, Mom.
Yeah.
So, you know, you kind of forget, because they are so very sweet. But I think that it's a universal experience when you're on any television show, but especially a show like this, where we're not talking $10,000, $100,000 at stake. We're talking about a plate, but to all of a sudden to be, because I mean, the show is so beloved by so many people, and you don't realize that until the first episode airs, and then people start to recognize you in the street. And that's a very weird experience, because going into, before they air it, you're thinking like, oh my God, am I going to be, well, with me, am I going to be the shortest person? Yes, indeed I was. But like, am I going to be funny? Am I going to be messy? Am I going to, like, you don't know how you're going to appear to people, so that's a little nerve-wracking. It's a little nervous coming up to the first episode. And after you see the first episode, you go, okay, I didn't look like a Goomba. Like but after the show starts to air and you get recognized, excuse me, on the street, that's a
whole other thing.
So strange, man. The first time it happened, this lady went, I know you. You're on the baking show. And I went, yes. And then she just stood there and looked at me.
No, like, at all.
Okay, this is awkward, and
I marveled.
It's like, okay. And so I said, well, okay, have a great day. And I walked away. Now I've got it down pat. Now I realize that if somebody recognized me and they want to like engage, because you do get some side eyes, like people are going, man, I know her, but they won't say anything to you, but you get kind of like, listen, this doesn't happen every time I go out. But when it does, like, I don't want you to think that I'm like a famous person, but like every now and then when it does happen, you'll get a side eye or something. But when somebody does recognize you now, like I'm more at ease with handling it and stuff. It still does feel a little odd, because it's like these people know you and you don't even know their first name. Like,
and they're like, you come into my home every week, and I just feel like
I know they know so much about me, Kristie, and I just go like,
they walk up to you and Rosemary, how are you? And you're there going, do I know you, or have you just seen me on the show?
I did have a lady shout at me across the aisle at Costco, my favorite place to hang out. And this lady called me Rosemary, and I kind of looked around, scanned the room, and there were other people looking around too, because they're going, where's Rosemary?
Who's this Rosemary?
Oh, maybe aisle 2 has the Rosemary in it.
I know. In big,
I was gonna say, given it's Costco, it's an entire
it's a bale of rosemary. Anyway, and then so she, like, so I looked around, I didn't see anybody I recognized, but she was determined. She came bounding over and she said, listen, I love the show, and blah, blah, blah. That's the other thing too, is that nobody's gonna come up to you and go, your show sucks. I mean, because it doesn't.
It's impossible.
Like,
okay, oh my God, why did you break up with so-and-so and ruin their life?
Exactly. That's not how a Shibakia should look. And I'm coming for you. That wasn't a Shibakia.
No.
But I mean, again, you and Nigel both, Costco apparently is where you want to yell out to bakers.
I know.
Costco. I mean, granted, he does have very distinctive headwear. I
have to ask, Rosemary, so you were a fan of the show before going on it. Did you ever run into a baker or catch one in the wild before?
No, but Jay and I auditioned in season 3 together, live, up close and impersonal. And it's really funny, because then when I got my rejection email, which was deserved, like, I don't even know where I got the chutzpah to like think, oh, I'm gonna go on the baking show, because I've been baking for like a year and a half now.
Totally.
But so we baked together at the audition, and it's a fun, some people you meet and you're very simpatico with them, like just off the bat, and Jay and I were like that. So I got my rejection letter and I sent him a little note. I went, so, I got my letter. So sad not gonna be on the show and everything. And I said, yeah, did you get yours? And he answered so vaguely. And I went, I think
You're
gonna
on.
be on the show.
Mm.
And then when the bakers were announced for season 3, you know, I sent him a little note and everything. I didn't really hang out with him. We've exchanged notes like throughout the years, but I didn't really hang out with him because I really did want to be on the show. Like I have no false modesty about that. Like I really wanted to be on the show. I just thought it was
we knew that.
greatest thing since sliced bread. So I would send him like messages and he would send me messages. We'd like each other. We followed each other on social media. But I didn't want to push it because I thought I don't want him to feel that I was like just there for information about the show. Because it will happen that there are some bakers who follow you and they're hoping that they're going to get like a leg up and stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, what can you possibly
no
offer
leg up.
them except
I mean,
no leg up to be had.
I'll tell you straight up, you don't even know this. I've had people follow us and then message us going, "Can you get us on X show?" And I'm like, "No."
Yeah, we're the power behind.
We're the power behind. No, we can't. Is the answer to that.
We are two.
That's pretty funny.
Amateur.
So now Jay and I can celebrate our baker love.
Yep.
And announce to the world that yes, we're friends. And
yeah,
we're actually going to the chocolate show here in Ottawa tomorrow.
Ooh, that'll be awesome. We're both insanely jealous. We love Jay. Yes. We love Jay. Jay is awesome.
But we're going to get to meet him in he's coming over to Australia for World Pride.
Well, he was talking about going over World Pride. So if he does. If he does, then yes.
He was talking about it, but that was
COVID. It was pre-COVID and everything else. Because we were talking about the Pride float for Bake Off. Yeah. But no, it's been like it's again, and we sort of we've done podcasts with him on Eurovision as well. So it's stepped outside of just the baking realm because of course nobody knows more about Swedish Melodifest than Jay. So it's just wonderful to have. In terms of
very odd, yeah.
But in terms of this, again, in terms of like the bakers in this series as well, it just seems, and we've obviously, very well the support inside challenges and the way people come over and help. But this season, it just seems to have been even just more open, honest, and everyone who needs help, how do you do it? And the way where people are like, I'll be ready in 3 minutes. If anyone needs any help in 3 minutes time, yell out, I'm there. And the interchangeable, the assistance, the help, and people not even asking, it's just like, what do you need? Has just been so warm.
And it happens even more, Chris, than it was shown. Yeah. Like every single episode, except for the technicals, every single bake, there was like offers of help certainly I got some help, but
you helped out too, so it works.
Yeah. But I posted on Reddit today. It was really funny. Somebody said, like on the Great Canadian Baking Show Reddit, somebody said, wouldn't it be cool? And I hope this person doesn't listen to the podcast because they'll be mortified, because I thought it was such a funny thing. They said, wouldn't it be cool if they had an episode where the bakers did like basic bakes, like banana bread, chocolate chip cookies, like just one episode? And I'm thinking, what?
No,
what?
That would be boring.
The oven would have to turn off for anybody to fail, like everybody. And then I wrote in and I said, listen, I have a better suggestion. Maybe what they should do is have somebody who can't bake come into the tent, take over that station, and make the baker watch them and not let them help.
That'd be fun.
It'll drive them crazy. Well, I know it would just make me squirrely.
It sounds like kind of like Cutthroat Kitchen goes Bake Off
a little bit. Yeah. Well, see, we've done, and this. I've proposed many times the Commonwealth Games, and I still think it needs to happen, where you put together a British team, an Australian team, a Canadian team, and if you really have to, a Kiwi team, but I don't think you have to.
Look, we're already cutting down a cornfield to build the baseball pitch because we feel
if you bake it, they will come. But the idea of then doing it as where you've got team challenges, and so you've got like 2 bakers maybe working on a larger bake instead, and that interaction, and you pick your bakers for the battles and stuff, which would just be fun. And it'd just be good fun to watch. But as you sort of said before,
what about we do it in card form? Bake Off for the Gathering.
We're working on that with We're
Like
working on that
magic
with
is
Nigel,
gathering.
Nigel and Aaron. We're working on that.
Okay, all right.
That's coming.
Sizzle.
That's absolutely coming. But in terms of, and I've mentioned this before, but I sort of know, like in terms of watching other versions of Bake Off, how much is sort of seeing like all the different types of Bake Off? Does it prepare you for Canadian? Does watching any form of Bake Off prepare you for what it's going to be like, or is it sort of?
Oh, it's a good question, and I'm not sure I know how to. I mean, I think it prepares you because it gives you an idea of how the Bake Off.
Yeah.
I mean, for lack of a better word, franchise works.
Yeah.
But I don't. I mean, I don't think that it prepares you a whole bunch. I mean, because the hosts, the judges, they're all such different personalities on the different bake-offs. And there's always like a little, some bake-offs have more sponsored products, like really front and center, smacking you in the face.
Yes.
And then there's ones like ours where occasionally you see like a bag of flour kind of on the screen and stuff. So I don't really know. I think if you do the technicals, like I really do enjoy technicals because I like, like baking new stuff and everything that's achievable. But no, I don't know. I don't know.
That understanding, I think it's the understanding with the technicals, because we'll talk a bit more about the technicals, because I think for me,
I'm so rude. I'm going to interrupt the interviewer, but I'm just on my goodbye and my in memoriam when I left the show that I on my little remembrance.
Rosemary, the remembrance.
Yeah. I said, because I know that there are bakers, because there are fans and then there are super fans of the show, and the super fans, we love them, but sometimes it's a little wackadoodle how involved they are, with the show. So I did say,
they start podcasts, imagining all this crazy that goes on in your life, like just making up narratives. They're insane. I don't know who these people are.
I know, crazy, yeah? But some bakers, like, they really head down rabbit holes, and that's all they do. Like, like they just are constant, like says the woman who did 2 bakes today, but like they're just constantly baking, and they bake for the show. Like they're not baking to give themselves pleasure or to feed their families or anything. They're baking with the idea of going on the show. And that's sort of baking, like, I think it takes some bakers into kind of a weird wackadoodle place, because a lot of the bakes that we do are not bakes that you're going to do at home. I mean, they're really not, like the Sans Rival. The Sans Rival in the Philippines, they buy that at a bakery.
Yeah.
Well, I mean,
it's
like when Anjali came on after her episode and was talking about the if you think logically about Bake Off, how often do you make a 3-tiered cake?
Yeah, I do.
Yeah, well, you do, but not every day do you sit around and go, you know what, we're going to bake just because I'm around the house and I'm baking 3 tiers. You should think logically about that. But on Bake Off, you go, well, that's a normal thing, a 3-tiered cake. And you're like, hang on, no, it's not. It's really not.
It's bizarre. Or a cookie diorama.
Yeah, well, how often do you do that? I mean, all the time again. But
I have a challenge though, because at school we had to build a diorama, and I just think kids should combine the baking and dioramas. Like, if I was a teacher, I'm like, you know what?
No dead dough. No dead dough.
All diorama, and I want to be able to eat parts of it.
Exactly.
Like,
so, but
and baking's a life skill, for goodness sakes.
Yeah, it's good for math. It's good for reading comprehension.
Yeah.
And in terms of the technical, and sort of linking it all back in again, when you were talking about people baking for the show, and they had that problem here with MasterChef Australia, where they talked about the fact that people were no longer just cooking and doing food for the sake of it. They knew the format and structure of the show, and you had a generation of people who were just cooking food in this is a MasterChef way to get themselves onto that program and do it that way, because that's what they thought it has to be. And it's one of the things that I love about the technical. And I think it's one of the reasons why this series has been so strong, is that all of the bakes, regardless of what they are based on a solid footing of know your stuff and know
Yeah.
what you do. And the one I'm going to give as the example is Lauren's showstopper from the semi-final, because with that semi-final bake, and Kyla talked about it, it was a case of you needed to be able to do a solid bake as a base bake. You needed to have some form of solid filling, which was going to be also structurally, useful. You needed the ability to have the decoration on top. You needed to be able to have the jelly to set properly, and the whole thing also needed the flavor. So what they're actually testing, when people look at that and go, oh, it's just this crazy, bake thing, they're testing 4 to 5 key core baking.
100%. Yeah.
And if you can't do that, you can make things look fancy, but if the rest of it doesn't work, the whole thing doesn't hold. And with Lauren's bake in particular, when they cut through it, I'm using hers as that example, that base that she had was solid. It wasn't going anywhere. The next layer set properly. The jelly was perfect.
Beautiful. Yeah.
The whole and design-wise, it was insane.
It's one of the things that, I look for when I'm, looking at food shows and stuff. Like in the early days, let's look at Anthony Bourdain and what's her name?
Nigella?
No, there was Nigella, Martin Yan, all these kind of like classic Julia Child, celebrity chefs who had a passion. A passion and a purpose and a joy to share. Like Martin Yan still makes my heart sing. I've seen some of his TikToks and YouTubes and stuff. I'm like, oh, you're still bringing this.
It's so awesome to have Yan on TikTok.
I love it. It's one of my favorite things.
Yeah, the first TikTok I came across with him, I went, is that like Martin Yan?
And he hasn't bloody aged. He's just...
Is that weird? Yeah, he's got that portrait up in the attic.
Watching him teach knife skills on YouTube is amazing.
He's so awesome.
But
it's what I like about Bake Off is that, and I hope it gets protected and nurtured in this way, is looking for the people who have the joy and the love and the passion for baking. Because if I feel that, like you came into it, wanting to bake, wanting to get on the show, but we can see there's a genuine love and passion and it's behind that.
It's so, like, I use the hashtag baking is science for hungry people a lot, because I really like, I can be a bit nebbish and a bit nerdish about stuff. Like you can see my Lego behind me.
Love it.
Which we're not allowed to mention on the show that's what I do with my spare time is I build
Scandinavian block art.
I need to introduce I need to introduce you to my colleague Rebecca, who's a fucking Lego nerd, and I love doing Zoom calls with her because I just talk to her, but I'm looking at all the Lego builds behind her.
It's a good thing you didn't have a dog named after a well-known cookie snack, but
but like just the joy of baking, like, so I do like the nerdish part of it. I do like the science of it. The reason why, Chris, I said that, yes, I do 3-tier is I basically hang around the house and keep my fingers crossed that anybody will ask me to make their wedding cake, because it's my favorite thing. I love making wedding cakes.
Well, we saw that with the bready cake that you made, which and I absolutely loved that logic where it's like, why aren't people having more bread-based bakes at a wedding? Because you need to, as you said, need to soak up and then you were pausing before you said the fact that everyone's getting drunk. But it's true.
Well, and Coravais like really are like, some couples keep them, don't even cut into them, because they are considered work of arts in the Ukrainian communities. I don't know about in Ukraine, but here in Canada, we have a very large Ukrainian population, diaspora, and they will keep those cakes for years and years and years, and the little birds and stuff will be kept as decorations on their, I don't know, shelves. But no, I enjoy, it's a crazy thing. I enjoy baking so much that I literally will turn off my computer. I finish at 3:00. I'll turn off my computer and I'll just like preheat the oven, change my clothes, and just start baking, because it's so fulfilling. And I take my bakes over to the local shelter, so they're not going to waste. Like, I'm not throwing out food and stuff. And it's really just, to me, it's just a fun hobby, you know.
Also, there's one other, and we mentioned it before. We mentioned it before, and you mentioned it before. One of the benefits for me is the fact that you're competing for a cake plate.
Mhm.
You're not competing for a prize. It's not about fame. This isn't, and this is where I think with British, because everyone who goes on to British is competing for a book deal. And that's an honest statement. That's not me speaking out of turn. Just look at the number of them. By the way, again, look at their covers. The cover photo is always the same. The baker is looking slightly off the camera, like they don't know the camera's there, and laughing at somebody behind it. It's always the same. Go and look at everyone's books. Rosie is doing a beautiful visual, which you don't get to see, but we do. And it's true.
That's your book cover, right?
But I think part of it,
laughing along
perfect.
Berries.
Yes, but I think one of the things for me about it too, and it goes back to one of our favorite comedy radio shows. They used to talk about the fact they didn't give prizes for people who'd ring in because they wanted what they referred to as, the mad amateurs. They didn't want people who were in it professionally to go and like come on to win a prize and tell a fake story. They just wanted someone who had a fun story to tell and would come on and just tell the story because it's a fun story. And I think with Bake Off, it's about the same. You want people who want to go on and have a fun baking journey and just enjoy themselves. You don't want someone who's there looking around going,
how do I get
I'm eyeing all of you off because I'm going to bump you all off because I'm going to be the top one here and I'm not going to work with you and have fun. And you get, as a result, a group of people together who just want to have fun.
I think Lauren was after, she mentioned,
she threatened to bump everybody off.
I will tell you, it's a funny thing about the joy, I don't know. I often wonder if other people experience it. Like I have, I always say I've come from far. Like I have at this point in my universe, I have a very joyful life. But when I walked into the tent the very first time, sometimes you get that bubble of joy coming up in your chest, just that euphoric feeling. And I was walking in and first, it's an out-of-body experience because, you're seeing the tent from an angle that you've never seen it. Yeah. But it's just that overwhelming joy of being. And I just felt, I'm where I'm supposed to be. Like it was so wonderful.
And so there's that, that kind of, I guess, like, disassociation between I'm actually here and that feeling and that you're about to be a part of this. How did you keep yourself grounded and connected to the moment and making it work? Or was that just irrelevant and you just clung on for the ride?
Did I? No, I think I did. Listen, I work in a very serious profession and I am a very grounded person and I really, I have a very good sense of myself. I'm not sure if it's because of my age or just, life experiences or because like this is the point that I've gotten to, either it would have been 20 or 40 or 60, but I'm quite grounded. So I don't think I had much difficulties. I mean, the other bakers will tell you that there were a number of times where I would say to bakers, listen, it's just cookies and cakes. Like that's like, we're not saving anybody's lives. If somebody like Zoya would get nervous, Zoya, not only is she a doctor, she's a pediatrician. And not only is she a pediatrician, but she's an endocrinologist.
Yeah, exactly.
I can barely even spell endocrinologist. Like this woman is she's so clever. She's so smart. She's just like the whole entire package.
Personable, like it's a rare combination of a specialist, a children's specialist, and having the right temperament and ability to engage with people. Yeah.
And she got nervous. She was anxious. And I said, Zoya, you're a doctor. This is just like, it's just cookies and cakes.
Yeah, but as we also established though, Rosie, she was actually terrified because she's, as you know, stealing the inheritance one bake at a time. So that's actually what the nerves was. That's actually what
I thought it was a little strange when the crate, from her mom's house started arriving at the hotel. But now, like, I see the story.
We put it together.
And the lawyers working in the background.
The lawyers signing off on things.
Grateful. There is a grateful public. Thank you for figuring
exactly.
that.
That's what we do. It's like the schlag and like and fighting the schlag. So, but in terms of, just before we sort of get to the end and wrap up a little bit, I do want to ask, because I do actually sort of know the answer to this. Is there anything that you didn't get to do in the pavilion that you wanted to do in terms of bakes? Because I know there's one thing you wanted to bake that you didn't bake.
I know what you're talking about. Okay. So I had said this was my thing. Like, I told everybody, all I wanted to do was just, like, they didn't have to put me on the show. Like, I honestly, like, in my mind, somehow twisted, I kind of thought this was like normal. I said, like, you don't have to put me on the show. Just let me bake one chocolate chip cookie in the tent. And like, for some reason, I should have done it like the first episode.
Or episode 2 with biscuits and bars.
I know, I just never got around it. But I will tell you, okay, so I'm a failure. Like, I never got to bake the damn chocolate chip cookies.
Exactly.
And I had
what we're
this
thinking.
plan at one point that, like, I had worked out this bake in my mind, but none of the briefs matched it. That I have these glasses from my mom that mustard used to come in. And I don't know about anywhere, but in Canada, every household when I was a kid had these cups. So I thought I would make like a giant cake like that with, it's got like the suits of cards, like the hearts and spades and everything decorated. So I thought I'd make a giant cake, put those on, and then make a stack of chocolate chip cookies next to it. So it would be like a glass of milk and cookies. And I never managed to
work it in,
shoehorn that into anything. But what I did do was, the first night after the first day of filming, I went back to the hotel, and we do have kitchens in our hotels. We're very lucky. And I went back to the hotel and I baked a few batches of chocolate chip cookies, and then I took it into the crew the next day.
Well, there you go.
There were chocolate chip cookies, by association.
You were chocolate chip cookie adjacent.
Look, Rosemary, I've just had an idea. So they're coming up with a Christmas, right? So Canada does a Christmas, so does British and stuff. I suggest February next year we do a Kristie special, and the first challenge will be chocolate chip cookies.
Chocolate chip cookies.
Because it will be all around the world. You'll have to organize your own judges and that kind of thing. But I think we can do this.
We'll just get airfares and go over to Canada and judge it ourselves.
Yeah.
But
I have a spare
my to-do list. Win lottery.
Well, we were actually. I don't know if you didn't see it, but when we were yesterday, we were tagged in a post on Instagram around Vincent and he made the turkey that we talked about, his mother's turkey. And he was talking about sharing.
Doesn't it look delicious?
Well, that was the thing. I don't really eat turkey, but that turkey itself made me go, I'd eat that. And we were actually tagged in that because he was like, I was going to share it with my Australian friends at the Washing Up Pod, Chris and Kristie, but I didn't think they'd be able to make it. And I'm like, well, you didn't give us notice.
I know.
So, if you give us notice, bakers, we'll come over and judge your stuff. Yeah. I mean, just
notice.
saying. Airfares,
GoFundMe,
all of that, go fund us, and we'll do an entire Washing Up Canada special where we just go over and tour.
Yeah.
Because last time we tried it,
I have a spare $10-20. I'll chip.
Wait, that'll cover all of it. We're set there. It has been.
That's Canadian. That's Canadian bucks, by the way, not Australian.
Well, that was like when I had to do the conversion for Anne.
Buy a mansion in Australia.
Well, that was when I had to do the conversion for Anne on Millionaire Shortbread when she said I want a Brazilian millionaire, and I'm like, Anne, that's only
so funny. I was laughing the whole time I was listening.
It's only 750 Canadian. So you might want to find a better exchange rate there, Anne. This is an absolute delight and pleasure. Thank you so much, Rosemary, for coming on. We really have been looking forward to this. As I said, when I posted the one up for Nigel and went, I wonder who we're talking to, and literally all I got was, it's Rosemary, it's Rosemary, it's Rosemary, Rosemary. And all these people messaged me going, so when are you talking to Rosemary? Looking forward to the Rosemary chat. Larry in particular messaged me immediately privately, sent me a thing going, so say hi to Rosemary when you talk to her. And I went,
are you serious?
Instantly, Larry messaged me and was like, that.
I will. Here's a funny thing, eh? Like, Jay. Okay, so I've had Amy over to the house with Marion. Both of them come over when the girls were here from Toronto, and Andre was here from Ottawa. And Jay couldn't make it. So when we went for dinner last night, like, you know, I invited Jay along, and the boys didn't know he was coming. I revealed it, unfortunately, before it was supposed to happen. But Jay said, like, are you sure they're going to be okay with it? Because he knew that it was going to be a surprise. And I went, like, the alumni bakers have no idea the amount of hero worship we have for them. It's like, you know, like, and it was, Amy actually said, she said, oh no, I think I'm more excited to meet you guys. And I'm going, how is that? Like,
Well,
how is Amy
we've seen that, and we've seen that now as well with, again, the crossovers, and we love seeing that crossover with the Australians and Canadians, and like talking to a couple, you know, Aaron and Nerman from Australia, and now Nerman setting up, you know, bake dates with Chi and stuff like that. And I'm like, yes, this needs to happen. This will be absolutely fantastic. And just like watching that crossover, like my heart sings when I watch all of this. And it's the amount of, when everyone watches and then sees, I love what you do. And that's such just a wonderful community of bakers.
You know what's going to happen between those two? We're going to get, what was it, 1,000-year-old egg, like friggin' pavlovas with possum meat and God knows what else.
It's
like,
going to be so out there.
And it's going to taste like fucking
it's gonna be
ambrosia.
Like, it's going to be amazing. As we mentioned, you know, Nerman from Australia did do the other day his blood cake for.
I saw that.
He's a doctor as well.
Yes.
So.
I wonder what it tasted like, though. Like,
he'll tell you what was amazing.
Yeah, well, I know, but for reals, I wonder what it tasted like. But I mean, it is, you know, stuff like that. Like, we all sort of kind of, you know, you go, wonder if I could use this in a bake, you know. And some things you don't like. Yeah, you're not going to do that.
It's that level of series crossover, and just the way that, you know, bakers go, oh, well, I don't really want to talk. And then when people message, I love what you do. And everyone's like, I love what you do. And it's such a warm community. And like, that sort of typifies it.
I've just found my Twitter hot take.
What is it?
I'm going to sizzle it for the end.
Oh, you're going to sizzle it for the end?
I'm going to sizzle it for the end. That's going to be my thing.
Well, we're there at the moment. So anyway,
okay.
Thank you so much, Rosemary. It has been an absolute delight to have you on. And obviously, you know, next up for you, obviously, is getting prepared for, you know, the Virgies, which are coming up. So that's, you know, baking's night of nights.
Virgies. Yeah. I mean, talk about in awe.
It's prestigious right there.
Yeah.
So it is
with a capital P.
Oh, completely. So thank you so much, Rosemary. Until next time, I'm still Chris.
And I'm still Kristie.
And we'll catch you all later.
Hot take, right? Human blood is a vegan alternative to eggs. Thank you. Good night.